Hey, welcome back to another episode of Human Powered Podcast. I'm Jen Rubin, and I'm here with my former colleague and friend, Jessica Becker. Hey, Jessica.
Hey, Jen.
So I know, Jessica, you had suggested that we talk with someone from the Wormfarm Institute. And, for people who've been listening to this podcast for a while, like one of the things we're trying to do is talk with people who are really doing sort of the local work of building better civic health in communities, right? I mean, that's who we're interested in talking to. And I think the work of the Wormfarm Institute is doing that in ways that almost no one else is doing that. And so could you just give us like a quick idea of like why we're talking to Jay and what we're about to hear?
Absolutely. I'm really excited to talk to Jay. He and Donna, as the founders of the Wormfarm Institute in Sauk County, are people that I think of as really at the forefront of thinking creatively about how to bring together people and ideas across geographic difference and just with different experiences and interests into places and spaces where there is a collaborative and sort of curious conversation that opens up. And their work has been recognized around the country. They've received a lot of acknowledgement for the unique ways that they've built on the relationships to continue to explore how we can learn from each other and where sort of culture intersects, and specifically in rural areas with agriculture, rural communities and urban communities, what they have to learn from each other. So I'm pretty excited to hear from Jay, and I don't think anybody walks away from a conversation with Jay or the folks involved with the Wormfarm Institute and the Farm Art DTour and the Fermentation Fest. These are all things that you kind of can't help but be inspired by and feel like new ideas are sparked, and you see the world a little differently after thinking about thinking about these ideas and talking to Jay. So it's going to be a great conversation.
Great. All right. Let's do it.
Well, this is fun already. Thanks, Jay. I'm happy to be spending my morning with you, and glad to see you here on Zoom. I've known you for a long time now. It feels like one of these wonderful Wisconsin connections at this point. So, Jen, this is Jay. I'm introducing you to Jay here on Zoom this morning. But in getting ready to talk, I was refreshing my memory and actually found a lovely article by Therese Allen in the Isthmus, reminding me of our initial work together back in 2010, right?
Wow.
When right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the Worm Farm applied and was selected to host a Smithsonian traveling exhibit called Key Ingredients. The exhibit was designed to travel to small communities, and the Wisconsin Humanities selected these 6 communities, and it opened there in Reedsburg, downtown. Yeah, right. And reading the article from Therese Allen, I'm reminded of some of the amazing work that you did to kind of nestle this national exhibit about food and foodways in the region. And that kind of has been your hallmark of work, is sort of the cross section between culture and food. And out of that came the Reedsburg Fermentation Fest. So yeah, welcome.
Thanks.
It's great you're still doing all this good stuff. And we're
What
so
else?
lucky to have you here.
Yeah. Well, that was like an inflection point in the Worm Farm's history there. I mean, we're celebrating our 25th year. So if you count back, we were 10 years old by the time we secured the Smithsonian Museums on Main Street exhibit. We had a residency program by that time that had operated for 10 years. We've been doing some, other community scale work, and we worked our way through, like we ran a gallery on Main Street for a while. We started doing historical murals in the community. We did some we did a puppet fest for about 5 years, making giant puppets and parade puppets and going down Main Street, and that was fabulous. We had a project called the Roadside Culture Stands, which is still manifest. We commissioned artists, architects, and designer to build mobile vending stands on a trailer, a platform. So they're like rolling works of art that are also, places where you can share a farmer's market, a vendor can share food, or an entrepreneur can share whatever it is they do. And we still have those, and we still use those. And it was after that this Smithsonian piece came through, and yeah, it was really great, because not only was it great to have the Smithsonian here, but it really was an entree into our community. We had this weird thing called Wormfarm that made these crazy puppets that blocked Main Street. But then when we got the Smithsonian to partner with us, then the Chamber of Commerce and the business community and the surrounding community said, okay, let's see what these guys can do. And that was a fantastic thing. So it's key ingredients America by Food. And what we proposed to the Smithsonian was we were thinking about Wisconsin foodways, and beer and cheese and sausage and all those things are fermented. So we decided to call it, I wanted to call it Fermentorama. We ended up calling it Fermentation Fest. But I'll slow down and let you guys jump back in at some point.
Well, I'm just going to jump in for a second, because I live in Madison, and I know we're gonna get to the DTour project that you all have. So it's through the DTour that I learned about Wormfarm, which I love. That it just makes me think of a farm full of worms or whatever. And so I'm just wondering if you could go back a little bit. I know you touched on a couple of things, but first of all, like, how did you decide to use art as a way to do community, how did you decide to do that? Why Wormfarm? All of that. Just give us a little bit more of the origin story.
I'll go all the way back. So my partner, Donna Neuwirth, and I moved to rural Wisconsin in 1993 from inner city Chicago. We were living in Pilsen, high density Mexican neighborhood. Probably more people lived on the block that we moved from than lived in the township that we moved to. We were nearly perfectly ignorant of what life in rural Wisconsin would be. I mean, it's a cliche. People move from Chicago to Wisconsin all the time. They last a few years, and the smells and the isolation get to them. So anyway, so we bought a farm and taught ourselves to grow. We've been running it. So the first worm farm was and is a CSA. We in 1995 we started a small community supported agriculture farm. So we had been on the farm for 2 growing seasons by that point, and launched this venture probably before we should have, but we got away with it. And we were thinking about what to name it. We were learning tons rapidly. And one of the things we learned about was earthworms and how they are both the indicators and creators of healthy soil. And then we were particularly intrigued in our studies when we learned that Charles Darwin had studied earthworms and written a beautiful little treatise called On the Formation of Vegetable Molds Through the Action of Earthworms. And there's a quote from that we extracted. There's a tagline for our CSA, which was that every fertile grain of soil has passed at least once through the gut of an earthworm. And I just love that, because it kind of turns that whole food chain thing upside down, right? Or closes the loop on it. And so we wanted to pay homage to the lowly, subversive, unseen creatures that make all of our food possible. We called ourselves the New Earth Worm Farm. And my partner's last name is Neuwirth, but we sort of jiggered that a little bit. So Neuerth Worm Farm. And so that operated for 5 years before we were convinced by others to start a nonprofit, an arts-based nonprofit. I mean, that wasn't the world we came from. I was an artist. I was trained as a sculptor. Donna was in the theater. So yeah, we taught ourselves the farm. We started the CSA. And then after a few years of doing that, we recognized that while we loved that, we decided it was not how we wanted to make our soul living. And there were these other things that we wanted to do. But and at the time, our the program that we used to establish it was the Artist Residency, which was our foundational program and still continues now. And it's so we have artists who come and stay on the farm in the summer. We have like a 5-month season from May till October. They live and work on the farm. They work in the garden. There's a work exchange, so they like 15 hours per week, supporting ongoing farming operations. And in exchange for that, they have room and board and the time and space to create their own work. So we were doing this informally, but when it came time to apply to the IRS, we had to explain the purpose and the goals of this thing. And we went back and forth for quite, 3 or 4. This is like when you sent letters. We were like typing letters and sending them to an office in Kansas City, and they'd send us back some questions. And I refer to it as a Socratic dialogue, because they were like, so how does having artists live on a farm support your mission? We had to think about it, because they will then be immersed in these processes, and it'll inform their art, and they will share it with the community. And when they finally that was our program, and that kind of thing that exists to this day in almost that exact form that the IRS approved. And so
That's great.
we have a 40-acre farm. We're about 5 miles east of downtown Reedsburg. And at that time, we were doing the CSA. The vegetables were going to Chicago, which is a whole other story, but kind of important in how we evolved. And the artists were here, and the artists interacted with the shareholders, and they interacted with the community, and they immersed themselves in the farm. And it was just a fabulous thing for everybody. And it's led to everything else that Wormfarm has done has been inspired or directly emanated from that program. The people we work with, the people we hire, very often have come through that program. It's a really unique situation, but it's also for the right people. Many times it's been life-changing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting origin story. And I think it also gets at that learning that happens when you're interacting with people who are coming from different perspectives. So you're bringing outsiders into the agricultural sort of culture of Wisconsin, and then sort of building systems as you go, as you're learning. So
Definitely.
that's just a really lovely reminder of how much learning happens when different people come to the table, different perspectives, and you're ready to listen.
One of the so I produced Love Wisconsin, which is a
Yep.
statewide storytelling thing. Yeah.
I watched
And
it.
so we did a series of like it was with rural urban action group, and they put a call out for people who they thought were civic health heroes, and we did a feature on them. So one of them was Beatrice Hart, right?
She's a collaborator. Yeah, good friend.
Yeah, and I just loved how she talked about like bringing her people from her Milwaukee neighborhood, people connect with Alice's Garden, and bringing it out to your farm,
Yeah.
and the cross collaboration and what it was like for people to be able to be in that space and experience nature and farming in that way, and then bringing people from a rural part of the states to Alice's Garden. And I feel like there's a lot of people, I think, Wisconsin Humanities included, Love Wisconsin included, that are very interested in, is there a way to bridge this like rural urban divide? And obviously it's not an easy thing to do, because look at where we are,
Right.
as a country. But I think you're an organization that has figured out how to do that.
So back in 2008, we did a fall art DTour, kind of upstart thing. We hired like 5 or 6 artists that we work with to do some painting in a field and build an installation over there. And we would put our signs up right next to there'd be, fall art tour this way, and we put fall art DTour this way. And we did that once, and we said, let's go visit that DTour thing again. And so it's to lessen the offense, we call it the farm art DTour. Farm is at first, and that's very important. That gave us a format to reach out more widely to creatives and growers and entrepreneurs. And so we got to invite some of these people I met when I was in Milwaukee were invited to support the work we were doing with farm art detour, and it opened up a number of doors. Okay, so long way to get to the point where we connected with some folks in Milwaukee, primarily among them James Godsell, who's a poet and roofer in Milwaukee. He's just a brilliant connector of people. He introduced us to all sorts of folks there, Venus Williams and Alice's Garden, and we started figuring out ways to get back and forth in each other's community. And we were doing it very informally, and there would be a bus tour from. This was a really important one. James Godsell set up a bus tour. A couple of buses full of artists, farmers, community activists came from Milwaukee and drove on the detour. And they would stop along the way and then get out and do like their own creative interventions. So one of my best memories is at this place, this food chain site where these roadside culture stands were referred earlier, and a fire, and people are eating and gathering. They get out, and James Finlayson brought a bunch of instruments and percussion things that he bought and made and passed them out. And within a few minutes, he had all of us white Lutheran rural folks bashing out polyrhythms while people were dancing around the fire, and Munir was singing Yoruba chants, and it was like, my God, what just happened here? And so we decided to make it a thing, and we were calling it Rural Urban Continuum because we always talked about our work. And then Godsell, being a poet, says, no, it's the flow. And he was immersed in this urban rap culture, and he's like, when people are when it's coming, then it's flowing. So that's what we wanted. That's what we're looking for. And so we began working with greater urgency and deliberation to link those two communities. I mean, we talked earlier about how the rural-urban divide is, ancient, but in Wisconsin, our observation was, and I think it's fairly at that time, the urban-rural divide had been exploited and leveraged to gain political power, and one of the manifestations of it was after the 2016 election. When these electoral maps and the blues and the reds and all that stuff, and you'd see these islands of blue and seas of red, cities in the rural among all the land. No matter what you thought of the outcome of the election, that's not a healthy dynamic. So we began looking for ways to link people, and what our lesson from the CSA is: food, art, culture. Those are the things that bring people together. We already know what divides us. Let's find a way to bring people together and talk about things that are commonalities instead of our differences.
You're bringing up so many great memories for me, and one of them is at Amaranth Cafe, actually sitting down and talking with you and Donna on behalf of the Wisconsin Humanities. And I think you were working with Will Allen then and doing that back and forth trip. And really getting deep into conversation about exactly this type of bringing people together from different perspectives and how to do it. Because, of course, that's what Wisconsin Humanities wants to do through all of its programming. And we were always so impressed by the on-the-ground work that Wormfarm did. We're able to support several of your efforts with grants, in addition to, getting to work hand in hand really on the key ingredients tour, getting to know how you worked through those 6 weeks that the exhibit was there in Reedsburg. Because part of the cool thing about bringing these Museum on Main Street exhibits from the Smithsonian was that there was a buildup. We worked together for a year and a half, right before the exhibit opened. We worked together thinking about programming. Wisconsin Humanities designed a Wisconsin component to the exhibit. You all designed a very cool local exhibit about butter wars and the connection in Reedsburg to the Oscar Mayer Wiener song and other cool things, right? Yeah. So there was this way to sort of layer the conversation with multiple entry points, which I thought was exactly what you do. And you're telling the story too about how the events at the Farm Art Detour also exemplified that. I'm remembering not too long ago, a few years ago, I was just traveling to different sites on the detour with my family, and I happened to get to hang out with you and Donna at one of the sites where there was uh, tacos were being served and some tequila was being consumed, and there was a
Well,
celebration.
mezcal, yeah,
Yeah, some mezcal,
okay.
a lot of music, a lot of sort of good feelings. Do you want to talk about the more deliberate work you've done to connect with the farm workers and
Yeah,
that community in your
sure.
area?
Sure. So I mentioned the farm art detour. Farm is the first word. Farm is the thing we emphasize. People are go, oh, the art farm detour. No, it's the other way around. So um, this none of that work that we've done with the detour for the past 15 years would be possible without the participation of farmers. As we were looking at these routes and determining a scenic route and what might happen along this route, at first we thought that when we installed artwork in farmers fields, people would drive by in their car, roll in the window, take a picture, and then drive off. And then the very first morning, the very first day of the very first detour, the very first stop, when I was driving, I pulled up to the first stop, number one, and there's 8 cars parked alongside the road there, and people are out in the farmer's field, not quite climbing on, but examining this thing there. Oh, this is a very different event than I thought it was going to be. So, I mean, we've been doing this for a while. We've demonstrated this thing is a fantastic tool for bringing people together. And then I think it was the pandemic year, Puentes Bridges reached out to us. They're a nonprofit up in Buffalo County that works to facilitate healthy relationships between Wisconsin dairy farmers and the immigrant labor that keeps their operations viable.
We
Uh,
actually talked with Mercedes here on the
oh,
podcast a couple months ago.
geez. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you know all about their work, and your audience will hopefully know about that. But it's really beautiful and powerful work. They reached out to us, and right. Oh yeah, I want to work with you. And it took us a few years to figure out what it might be. And we visited up there and met the folks that she was working with, and they came down here. And if there's a dairy farm that has more than 100 cows, there's probably immigrant labor involved there. So they came down and met some of the folks that we work with that employ Central Americans. And so what we're working on most recently now, it's a multi-year project, and an artist who came to Wormfarm initially through the residency program, Maria Patricia Tinajero, who is a PhD in visual arts and has been here multiple times, native of Ecuador. But she and Mercedes were introduced and began talking about their commonalities. And so that has now evolved into a project called Walking and Talking. And so Patricia is utilizing that most fundamental human form of locomotion, one foot in front of the other, and walking across Wisconsin, engaging with farmers, landowners, and the immigrant labor again, and collecting stories about home, about land, about kind of sense memories about what makes a place home to you. And so again, you have to be really thoughtful about the way you share their stories about how they got here and what they're doing with their time here. And they're beautiful and heartbreaking, and really helps to put a human voice and background to this phenomena, which is universal in the agribusiness in this country. Their stories are powerful.
One thing that has me think about is, I think one of the things that, that humanity's work tries to do, right, is just to show that like the shared humanity of everybody, right? Like national news is so dominant, right? I mean, it's really hard, like, but as much as possible, you just have to try to make an impact with stories and news locally, right? To try and
Yes.
to try and put out the noise that's coming at us, right? That's so terrible. And trying to get folks to see, okay, but in our community, like this is an actual person who's doing this actual work near you. You know, the food you're buying is like food they made or whatever, like as much as you can to like, this is what's happening locally. Let's just, so anyhow, so I appreciate that she's doing that like on the ground work of trying to get those
Well,
stories.
it's a really interesting thing to her story collecting is she's talking to, like people who are proud of their, their great great grandparents who immigrated here from Switzerland years ago. And why did they
Mhm.
leave us? Well, because there was religious persecution, there was that kind of thing. Oh, isn't that interesting? That. So these immigration stories, both contemporary and historical, these things are not unique to anybody in there. And again, it's that shared story, that shared humanity that unfortunately, many folks now forget that, why their families came here in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I want to take us back, if that's okay, to the farm art detour because it's a pretty amazing and kind of unique project. And so I think first of all, let's as best as we can paint a visual for folks. So
Okay.
I've driven it a couple times. I think what is it? It's probably like 20 miles the detour, or not even.
50.
Oh, 50. Okay, so more so than 20.
Yeah.
So you're driving around this, it's a pretty part of the state. You're in a rural area, you're seeing lots of farms, and then every once in a while you'll come across a place where there is a designated detour.
Right.
And you get out, and maybe you're going to find an opera singer standing on a pickup truck, right? Or maybe you're going to find this incredible art installation coming out of the ground that you're going to walk around. It's like super amazing. And so it's really, for people who are not from the area, it really sort of has you experience the land in a different way, see the art. But then at the end, at least when I've gone, there's like a place you can get tacos, and then there's a band playing, and there's a little bit more of like the community feel there. So anyway, I just want to give people a little bit of a visual. Is there anything you guys want to add to the visual of what this actually is?
Sure. Here's how we describe it: a 50-mile self-guided tour through the beautiful working lands of Sauk County, Wisconsin, punctuated by temporary site-specific sculptures, performances, local food, etc. Um, because the landscape is really the star here, and
Mhm.
the artwork is the thing that you see occasionally. It's a 9-day event along public thoroughfares. People can join it from any point they want to, go any direction they want to, and just stumble upon it if it's happened so often too. So we're really proud that we have lowered the barriers to engagement. It's anyone can stop and look at the work. One of the things we've noticed also is that as you're driving around in your car and you're going from stop 3 to 4 to 5, you're with other people who are doing that, and pretty soon these kind of like informal caravans develop, and it's like, did you see that thing back there? What did you think of that? And then they get to what we call the food chain site, where you say where there's performances, where we bring in food vendors. There's plenty of places to eat out on the route. We want people to go to the Shelter Bar or the Junior's Tavern or Ideal Tap and have one of their burgers and a beer over there. But they also want them to come. For the last several years, our primary vendor at the food chain was the Hispanic Knights of Columbus, that was originally out of Sauk City, and they have a taco stand, and it's just love this. The food is great.
It was some good tacos.
I mean, it succeeds in ways that we would have never imagined. We wanted to put weird stuff out in farm field. We had no idea that there would be this community development piece. There's a significant economic development component that when we conceived this, we never imagined. But it's millions of dollars in economic activity stimulated during this 9-day event.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to speak to that and just say that I know you have gotten a lot of recognition for this impressive work, and well deserved. And you've gotten a lot of national attention that has also looked for, at this model, really, right? The Smithsonian being one of the groups that has said, "Wow, you really took this to the extreme and made something with this opportunity that was a showpiece that they've trumpeted around, but you've also gotten a lot of national grants and federal funds and support and acknowledgement. So that's amazing. What are some of the things that have, yeah, congratulations. Like I feel proud to know you. I feel excited by the little connection
It's
that
still
we can make.
surprising to us.
Yeah. And I feel proud to be able to connect that back to Wisconsin Humanities work because, as I said before, I think it has epitomized some of the powerful ways that Wisconsin Humanities efforts can have ripple effects, and small grants or small opportunities have incredible potential. So that piece is something I'm really proud about. I know that you've said, maybe informally, maybe more formally, that you're starting to sort of pull back, starting to feel ready to wrap some parts of these projects up.
Well, so it's public knowledge now that 2024 was the final DTour. It was 10th iteration, and as you know, Wormfarm has been around 25 years. After a pretty long period of study and exploration, we decided that we're going to try and make Wormfarm kind of a 2.0 version. So, I mean, we have been able to hire staff. I mean, we're a tiny organization, but there's people who have the skills and experience and the desire to continue to keep this work going. So, in the next year or two, you know, first Donna will pull back, then I pull back, and we'll work some other folks in. And we got some projects happening in the future that none of them will be a DTour, I don't think, DTour level of engagement, but like it's a much lower key, much back to that worm stage again. There was an art critic, Manny Farber, who wrote an essay comparing white elephant art versus termite art. And you know, the white elephant is the giant spectacle that, you know, it's a great thing, but then what? And termite art is this much, you know, eating its borders and leaving the, you know, kind of unconsciously creating, you know, termite mounds or these cathedrals, self-regulating cathedrals that have, you know, but the termites don't know they're doing that, but they're, you know, so, you know, arguably the DTour was more of a white elephant type of thing, a giant spectacle that required tons of attention and work and pushing things around and moving things on the surface of the earth and left us exhausted at the end, although it was very satisfying, versus this other type of work where kind of where we started and kind of like, you know, just doing the work, making the connections and leaving this beautiful residue behind.
I was gonna say that's a great ending. That's really
I was
nice.
gonna say, like, let's just end with that metaphor.
I just want to say I really appreciate that too, because it speaks to this, I think, really big challenge of always wanting to go bigger, keep going, grow, expand, but to acknowledge the sort of phases and the cycles, and that it all actually matters. The termite art is, you know, that phase is super important.
And
Yeah.
maybe we'll end up with another white elephant in a few years with somebody else. You need to have those big things, those celebrations where you come together and you know, everyone be happy. But I feel we need to have that ground level or even subterranean work going on. What my takeaway is that people are hungry for those connections. You know, again, no matter what you think about what's happening on the federal level, things are changing and way more than they ever before. So I think the thing that we find ourselves believing we need to do is to reach out and make those linkages throughout the community that keep ideas flowing, keep relationships healthy and strong, and can building out that network.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I know you and Jessica have known each other, but I only knew of the work that you all did. So I enjoyed meeting you and getting a little more in the weeds.
It's been great talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. I appreciate having the opportunity.
Well, Jen, that was a great conversation. And I know I'm going to be thinking about this idea of white elephant and termite art and the implications that has for kind of the ebbs and flows and the critical work that's happening at different scales and in different time frames for a long time. That was a big idea for me. I liked that.
Yeah, and I always enjoy hearing the origin story of anything, and so I loved learning that initially, like people would come from the weekend from Chicago. I just really like how they just sort of grew organically from like what their interest was, and then as people came to them and as they learned more, they grew into more and more things, and so.
I think it's a great model that we can keep thinking about sort of how we learn from each other and how that one thing leads to the next. And for Wisconsin Humanities to remember that the ripples of small grants, of relationships, and of community work, those ripples go on and on and on. And that's just a really beautiful reminder. So thanks for being here, everybody. We'll put some links in the show notes, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks.